16. Secrets. Tishak strode into a sparring chamber of the main Ektal barracks of Tepeklan's old gatehouse, where the prince had taken up residence. Ichtak's every action in a city set ablaze with discussion in the wake of his call for Tlamakti would be scrutinized, and he meant to send a message with every moment's passing. The modest residence in a line officer's barrack room, the foremost among them. Behind the closed doors of the barracks, days had largely dulled the wounds of Kushkotlan, and he was sparring with every Ektal legionnaire in the city who wished to tangle with him, receiving long lines of visitors eager to test their mettle and meet their famed prince each day. Perspiring and spent with the afternoon's visitors all bested or fought to exhaustion, he now sat alone on the stone floor, with his head resting against the wall, just 2 days remaining before his most vital of days dawned. Tishak had visited him in the cages at the Kalmakak, but this was somehow different. An unspoken air of nervous tension had fallen upon them in the wake of the challenge. It had been the case each time he had sought him out over the past week, and it certainly hung heavy now. Ichtak could see it in his eyes as he approached, the hollow lack of certainty that told him his friend was not entirely sure the prince had much time left to spend with him. "Hail, destroyer," Ichtak breathed, grinning. He had used the old greeting several times since the two had worn the destroyer plate in the valley. Usually it brightened the mood, but it missed the mark here in the low light of the empty room. "Hail, Tlatoani," Tishak replied. The smile returned, but the eyes glum, separated from the conversation. He sank down along the wall next to his friend, letting the air out of his lungs and craning his neck for the muted ceiling. "Thunkoat has just arrived in the city with the rest of the Kushkotishko family, fresh from the front," Tishak reported. "He's sent his support, and an offer to spar. I'm sure he'll be in the vault of Sholotlan to see you in, come the day." "It'll be good to get to talk over the campaign with him," Ichtak said, nodding. "I haven't forgiven myself for setting all this off with the Ida still eyeing the borders. I should have been with him." "You're a hero in Kushkotlan," Tishak protested. "That's got to count for something." Ichtak shrugged, unwilling to accept the compliment. Silence was felt for only a moment before Ichtak pressed in to fill it, not wanting to give in to the dour mood of his friend just yet. "You changed your mind, I suppose," said Ichtak. "Come to get your skull knocked in, friend?" "Not quite," Tishak sighed. "I'll leave that to the pups who haven't seen you kill an Ida warlord. I'm just here to chat." "What about?" Tishak shook his head, irritated gaze rolling around to face Ichtak. "You shouldn't be so flippant," Tishak told him. "The Empire's eyes are on you." "I'd never have guessed. Is there anything else I've missed?" Tishak made a show of banging his head back against the wall, eyes closed, teeth bared. The exasperation was real, but the theater was meant to be comic, just enough to remind Ichtak he was serious without scolding him like a bettor. "You've been running yourself ragged. Will you be recovered for the Tlamakti?" "I believe so," said Ichtak. "I'll spend tomorrow in meditation. A bit of calm before the storm is called for, I think." "Probably a good move." There was a moment's lull. Ichtak worried he'd been too dismissive in his effort to deflect conversation from the looming Tlamakti, but Tishak seemed unfazed, pushing right along. "I know you're probably wondering the same things I am," Tishak said eventually. "You'd have to be. I don't trust that the challenge is what it seems." "It can't be. That I agree with." "Why would Her Highness choose a Koat, if he's so seldom come out the better in your duels?" Tishak shook his head again, seeming more distressed in that moment than the prince who had to face the Tlamakti. "What chance has a Koat?" I can't know that, said Ichtak. She's plotting, as ever. She's no fool. My mother might be the sharpest person in this city of sharp people. She'll have a plan, and Koat is part of it. Ichtak sighed, silently cursing the interruption of his mind-numbing exercise. There was no ill will towards Tishak, only frustration at the situation at hand. He doesn't know, though, Ichtak went on, eyes scrunched shut, almost pained by the lack of certainty. I could see it on his face in the throne room. He's as blown away as I am. That complicates things. Yes, it does, Ichtak agreed. He rose, feeling the need to play out some of the nervous energy creeping back into his limbs by pacing the dueling mat. Tishak let him be, allowing him to muse on his own time, the silent seconds ticking slowly by. Even if I knew, though, it couldn't change the path forward, said Ichtak. Whatever she's got planned, the only way through is to stumble right into it. Ichtak spun round to indicate the vacant room around them, saying, "Hence the distractions. If there's anything battle has taught me, it's not to worry about the details until I'm in the thick of it. Then necessity will drag them into the light." Tishak was looking towards the far wall, tapping his knuckles on the stone floor, nodding along with his words. "Or until I die, I suppose," Ichtak mused. "Then it really isn't my concern. Not like I can do much from Sholotlan." "Have you given thought to what happens if you win?" "Of course," Ichtak answered. "It's what I do when I'm not sparring or pacing around like a madman. I'll talk with the Ektal, write letters to the lesser royals, schmooze, that kind of thing." "I'm making legate day one, right?" "I'm looking to win a war," Ichtak protested. "If we're going to bring wrath down on the Duumvirate, I can't have you messing it up." They both regained some of their old mirth from that, but it subsided fast. Then they were in the murky quiet again, both minds racing for something to say which would seem worthwhile. "I have my ideas," Ichtak assured him. "I can't promise they're good, but I've laid them all out on paper. The rest is up to Harakwe and the men I hand them out to, I suppose." "Pokoat and I are with you," Tishak said. "All of the old academy class is. I know you and I spat here and there over how things should be run, but all of us want to see you make it. We all want the priests, the Ida, and the Lautani to answer for what they've done." "I appreciate it." Tishak hesitated a moment before saying what he meant to say next. "When you were reprimanded years back and things broke down with your mother," Tishak said, "no one seemed able to say why. We never asked. We didn't want to drag you back into it after you'd just climbed out of it." "It doesn't matter now," Ichtak cut in. "It's long been put to rest." "There were rumors, though," Tishak continued. "Pochtli and Pokoat were thinking of going into the palace guard, you know. They had friends in the priesthood who knew the palace." Ichtak stayed silent, his eye trained on the ground, teeth clenched behind a placid, distant expression. Tishak hurried on, not wanting to be misunderstood. "What I'm trying to say is that, even if it was all true, we'd still follow you into battle. There's been plenty of whoring and gluttony to whisper around with past Tlatoani. I don't really see a difference." "Plenty of Sholoshaishan soldiers whore and drink and glut," said Ichtak. "Not many of them fuck each other." Tishak was frozen by that. Ichtak had made no direct confession, but it was as close as he ever meant to come. "That's the difference," Ichtak told him. "Few would admit it, but it would ease many minds to catch a glimpse of their ruler being no more than a man, as they are, imperfect. It is the sort of imperfection that changes things." Ichtak looked to him again, holding his old friend fast. There will be a great many changes when I take the throne. Some things, though, will always be kept behind barred doors. I know who I am. The legions will fight harder and listen closer if they only know who I appear to be. Tishak gathered his thoughts as Ichtak began to pace once more. Tishak stood, making for the wooden weapons along the wall, selecting a makwahwit whose weight suited him. I know you well enough not to get hung up on how weird you are. Tishak chuckled, trying to soften the sting of the molten air in the room. The same goes for all of us. Ichtak caught his breath, taking his own turn to gather thoughts. You'll do me a favor, as an old friend? Whatever you ask, Tishak assured him. It'll get done if I can get it done. There's a Lautani Southlander from Eztlan province somewhere in the capital, said Ichtak. I don't know where. Perhaps the palace, but Shahwitzul seems more likely. Maybe the prisons. The clergy will be keeping him, I wager. Ichtak exhaled, shaking his head, uncertain. If I don't come back from beneath Sholotlan, then try and find him, Ichtak said. There will be chaos if I'm killed. No living heir and a female Tlatoani doomed to die by her own hand in pursuit of her fallen husband the moment I'm not there for her to mind. There will be a convention of the lesser kings and queens to elect a new dynasty for the first time, and struggle within the military and priesthood as everyone takes sides. Use that chaos to retrieve him, if he yet lives. It was more a plea than an order, but Tishak did not hesitate to nod his agreement. If it's possible, slip him onto a train south, Ichtak told him. He's well connected. His family can get him to safety, I think. I'll find him, said Tishak. Thank you, said Ichtak. It'll do me some good to know that. Ichtak knew not whether Setiawan still breathed the air of the living, but he wanted to know someone would be on the lookout if he failed to return. One last hurled punch into the dark, blind and almost doomed to miss. Still, it seemed better than nothing. Tishak tapped the floor with the wooden makwahwit's tip, saying, Still wanting to spar? Ichtak moved to retrieve a training blade of his own, leaving forgiveness where he had sheathed it on the benches across the room. You know I like to duel with the real thing, Tishak, Ichtak chided. And you went and left your real blade at home anyway. Worried you'll bleed? The two fought several brief bouts, all won by Ichtak, the spent prince still moving with a speed and ferocity that surprised his friend. Only long after the moon had risen and begun its march across the night sky above Tepeklan did they part ways, Tishak uncertain what the future might hold, and Ichtak simply glad he had at least some say in it, however brief it might be.